Hillbilly beatboxing sounds like the beginning of a Whose Line Is It Anyway bit, but I assure you this is not a Greg Proops joke. I first heard of Eefing when Mike Moore left this comment on an old episode. I Googled, and Lord, Google hath delivered. So that is Eefing. It's an Appalachian vocal technique that mixes hiccuping and wheezing, and at least in those clips, making that farting sound with your hands. Always hilarious. The easiest way to understand Eefing for cool millennials like us who didn't grow up poor and on a mountain in Kentucky is to compare it to beatboxing, which is sort of similar but less immediately hilarious.
Stick 'em, ha ha ha, stick 'em, stick 'em, ha ha ha, stick. We're gonna rock the beatbox in a fresh funky rhythm.
According to NPR, Eefing is intended to mimic the sounds of the hogs and turkeys that lived in people's backyards, the same way that beatboxing imitates turntables and drum machines, and dubstep drops. Of course, beatboxing was pioneered in the 1980s by artists like Dougie Fresh and Buffy from the Fat Boys, and Eefing has its roots in the 1880s. One of the earliest Eefing recordings actually comes from a pre-Elvis, pre-Sun Records Sam Phillips production, Harmonica Frank's 1951 single, Swamp Root. In 1963, Joe Perkins had an almost hit with Little Eefing Annie, which peaked at number 76 on the Billboard charts.
Little Eefing Annie, she is mine, all mine. Little Eefing Annie has a terrible time.
It was enough of a hit to merit an Alvin and the Chipmunks cover later that year, which I cannot find a recording of, but I can only imagine is as great as their version of Belinda Carlisle's Heaven is a Place on Earth. The hiccuping and wheezing on Little Eefing Annie was actually performed by Jimmy Riddle, who came to prominence in 1969 when ABC launched Hee-Haw. The show regularly featured Riddle and Jackie Phelps, Eefing and Hambone and the Day Away. The stylistic similarities between Fat Boys' Buffy and Hee-Haw's Riddle may be obvious, but I'd argue that there's also an important cultural through line. Even though Brooklyn, New York and Dyersburg, Tennessee might as well be on totally separate planets, Eefing and beatboxing both have their roots in cultures that may not be literally rich in terms of dollars, but have great pride in the richness of their culture and their history. And that's not unique to Appalachia or 1520 Sedgwick Avenue. Inuit throat singing has experienced a surge in global interest thanks to Tanya Tagaq, who I had the pleasure of working with on that show. Tagaq draws on a history of performance that typically sees two Inuk women singing together, facing each other, trying to outlast the other one. What binds all these vocal techniques is a wild, celebratory creativity that I would argue emerges specifically from a lack of wild material wealth. It's not a stretch to say that Eefing could not have come from the top deck of the Titanic, and that beatboxing was unlikely to emerge from Rodeo Drive. Which is not to say that I am disinterested in what that would have sounded like. What do you think? Is Eefing really hillbilly beatboxing? What is the craziest sound you can make with your mouth? Let us know in the comments, and be sure to subscribe for new episodes of This Exists every week. Thank you to everyone who is supporting us on Patreon. For the first time, we have some new posters on the background from people who have supported us. at that level, and I just mailed out postcards celebrating the birthday of Sir Charles Tupper, the shortest serving Prime Minister in the history of Canada. So thank you to everyone who supported so far, and if you're interested, there's links around, you can click them. Be excellent to each other.